How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome to an overview of the Winona character update for 2019 for Don't Starve Together. A lot of stuff has been announced and implemented during this update, and in this video I'm going to be focusing on the physical aspects of it more so than anything to do with the lore that was also sort of introduced that I know a lot of people are probably still poring over and trying to interpret, so I'm not going to even really touch on that. To get started with, we have new cosmetics. If we go to the shop here, you can see there are two new DLCs, I guess, available now. One is the Winona Deluxe Wardrobe, which includes Winona skins, 5 sets, with 12 total skins. And then the other one is the Voxola Warehouse Chest. This one's actually pretty interesting because it includes this new skin for the fence item in DST, and it's the first time we've been able to reskin an item that's capable of being stacked. So that has huge implications for new skins going forward. Let's go to the curio cabinet here, and as you can see, here's Winona. We select her, you'll notice these are the new skins that you can buy through the DLC pack that I showed you a little bit earlier. There are a total of 5 of them, but you'll notice down here below there are another 5, and these are the ones that were previously available for Winona, and you can still buy them on the Steam store, whereas the new ones use Clay's new spool method, so you can unravel or weave the ones that you don't own yet. The only real difference here between the two of them is that the new ones that are available in the chests are considered to be elegant, whereas the former ones that used to be elegant have now been upgraded to heirloom elegant. If you own any of these heirloom elegance, when the new ones are implemented, your respective skins will be upgraded to heirloom quality. The only real difference between these two loosely defined collections here is that the Grass Gecko Winona here is exclusive to the costume collection, which can only be purchased on the store, and the Industrious is only available to be woven. The same goes for any of the body items. Not that Winona has many exclusive to her, but you'll notice here, for example, that you can have 2 pairs of basically the same thing, these coral rose slacks. One of them is heirloom distinguished, and the other one is just classic distinguished. So I hope that makes sense, and as you can see, you do still have to collect all of the skins, including the heirlooms, to actually complete your character's collection, as you can see by the 80% progress bar right underneath Winona. In terms of the belongings, I pointed out in the DLC, right here is the pipe fencing, and then there's also the factory signpost. These are 2 individual skins for their respective items. There is a new factory portrait that you can get, as well as this signpost icon. And other characters are going to be updated in a similar fashion going forward into 2019. But enough of the cosmetics, let's jump into a world quickly here, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the new abilities that Winona has now after her big character update. I should also mention that the gift system in-game works a little bit differently now. For example, the number of gifts have been increased from 4 per week at max to 8 per week at max, and you also get 1 gift per day just for logging into Don't Starve Together. Okay, so if you're playing Winona now, one of the first things you'll notice is this new category down here at the bottom of the crafting menu called engineering. At the moment, for me, it does not have an icon. I'm not sure if this is a bug on my end or if nobody else has an icon as well. But inside the engineering tab, we have a total of 4 new structures. So of course, Winona has her trusty tape as before. I don't think its recipe has changed any, and I don't think its functionality has changed any from what I've seen. But then she also has a catapult, which is pretty cheap to build when you consider the resources required here. We also have Winona's spotlight. Then she has her generators, which are required to power the 2 aforementioned structures. So the first one is just called Winona's generator. And then down here at the bottom, we have Winona's gemerator. Get it? Because it uses gems. Now these can be built much as you would any other structure. You prefab it and then you place it down like so. One new thing that has changed about Winona is that when she's crafting stuff, for example, let's say she's crafting rope here, you'll be crafting a lot of it, you'll notice my hunger is going down by 5 hunger per item crafted, up to a maximum of, I think, 50 hunger, at which point her rate of crafting reduces significantly. I've heard it takes twice as long for her to craft an item. So for example, crafting these ropes are going to take twice as long now, but it no longer drains your hunger. However, when your hunger is full and you're crafting something like a rope, for example, you'll notice it's almost instantaneous. I think it's half the speed that it normally takes to craft something, and it reduces your hunger by about 5 hunger points per item crafted, which can make crafting quite expensive in the long run. And that applies not only to crafting things, but also to building and placing them. So for example, you built and placed that generator, I could build and place this spotlight here, and that once again takes away from my overall hunger just to build that, but not to prefab it, just the building part, not the prefabbing. So there are a couple of things you'll notice when placing things such as the generator or other structures that require power to operate. They have two rings around them, and you have to build the structures within those rings. So for example, you can see for this spotlight, I've got it in the same ring as its generator. If I power up that generator, it will power on the spotlight. But if I go here and I build another spotlight, let's say halfway in, halfway out, you'll notice that this spotlight is not powered. So you have to have the little circle around the object being powered inside the generator's big circle. So you can see like this would all work, but if you try to stick it outside of that main circle from the generator, it won't be powered like this one is here. So there are two different generators. There's a small one, like I said, it lasts about a day. And then there's the larger generator. And when I say it lasts about a day, it's different from things like Fling-O-Matics. For Fling-O-Matics, it doesn't matter how often it runs, it's still going to pull the same amount of fuel from it. With these, it does depend on how many structures are pulling power from it. So the more of these spotlights that I would build next to it here, the faster it's going to decrease in power, because there's some hidden like wattage that's being drawn from these units, and the more demand you place on it, the faster it consumes power, and the faster your fuel depletes, basically. So running one light, I made a mistake there. Running one light, it lasts for about a day, but if you run multiple lights, it's not going to even last that long. I imagine it would divide it pretty evenly based on how many you have there. The generator, on the other hand, lasts about 6 days, powering one light, and it requires gems. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of gems you have, pretty much any of them work, you just socket them in there. And this is actually something that'd be really cool to use things like blue gems and even some red gems for in later game worlds when you are just absolutely flush with these items from a lot of the hound waves. And like I said, blue gems especially, you don't really use them for much except maybe to make purple gems or an ice staff. And then also, I should focus on like the point of these spotlights. So far, I'm a little bit on the fence in terms of regarding them. They have a radius that's almost identical to the Fling-O-Matic, which allows me to build them kind of like this, where they're going to be overlapping. As I move from one to the other, I'll be covered in light. But the way the light works is a little bit unique. So here it's about to become dark, and you'll notice that when I'm walking around within the covered radius, my character remains illuminated. Now, there's not a whole lot you can do like this because, okay, and then when I walk to another area, you'll notice it switches over. So the beams are always on me. I'm not exactly sure how well this works in multiplayer. I think what they should do is have multiple beams, but from what I've kind of heard, I haven't actually experimented with this yet. Apparently it only focuses on one player, which in my opinion is a problem and makes them not quite as good. But as you can see here, it would allow you to move from area to area in a base and still be illuminated. However, there are a couple of problems here. For one thing, the lights run full time. Even when it's full daylight out and whatnot, they do not turn off. And you can't turn them off yourself, and that also applies to the generators. Apparently, from what I've heard, according to the stream that Clay did, it's intentional that you cannot turn the generators off because that was considered to be too overpowered. But one thing I think Clay should consider at the very least is that at least above ground, during the daytime, there's no reason to have these spotlights on. They should automatically turn off when there is daylight. Or I should say they should only automatically turn on at night. That would save power from the generators without requiring them to be capable of being turned on and off. And as you can see over here, obviously this generator is already out of fuel because I have it powering way too many spotlights. Another thing that I would like Clay to consider at the very least in regards to things like these power generators, if we're going to be lighting up bases using them, I would much prefer the ability to transfer power using something like power lines. Think about it, for example. You can see I've got some fences lined up here. Suppose I was able to transfer power in the same way to all these other lights. SimCity stuff. If you've ever played SimCity, you can easily power up areas just by laying lines going through them. I would like to see something similar to that because for me, it's just really hard to justify putting down these lights in individual places and having to build a generator for each one. They do not cover a massive area, you can sort of see here based on the tiles that I've laid out. It covers about the same area as a Flingomatic, and I think it's a little bit costly to expect a generator to be built and fueled for each of those. You'll notice that a lot of people like to base underground and Don't Starve together, especially for summer, because they don't have to refuel the Flingomatics constantly. And I'm afraid that's kind of, wow, this is empty again. I'm afraid that's going to be kind of the same thing that's going to happen here with these generators for Winona, is that having to pair each and every single light up with one means you can't just, come into a base, fill up your generator, and have light spread throughout the base, right? You got to visit each and every station, and it brings it back to making it a little bit too much like the Ice Flingomatic. And that's another thing, is that if Clay is going to be adding more of these type of powered structures to the game, I wish there'd be an alternative Ice Flingomatic that you could also power off of, like a grid like this. You could set up an array of generators, just power them from one area, and then send the power out. I think like they've done that in Oxygen Not Included, and I would like to see more of that here in DST as well. Okay, another thing I was going to point out, these are the skins. So you can see this is the new pipe skin for the fence. If we go here, wood fence, you can now choose between classic and pipe fencing if you buy the DLC for this, of course. This is a little bit of a new thing. In the past, there haven't been any items that were capable of being reskinned if you could stack them. So you'll see, for example, if we build a wooden fence here, it's going to stack in my inventory, right? There are 6 items in this one slot. So in the past, you couldn't reskin anything like that, and that covers a lot of items in the game. So with Clay adding the ability to skin stackable items, it opens up all sorts of opportunities for reskinning really cool stuff, walls as well, terrain. I would like to see different types of roads, different colors of marble, turf, and whatnot. I think Clay can do a lot to make the game look a lot more fun, being able to reskin these stackable items. And I think, while you might not get really excited about these wood fences being reskinned to pipe, I think there's a lot of potential that definitely gives us reason to be optimistic about this. Lastly, I want to cover the most cool aspect of all for Winona and her new abilities, one that I think most people are probably going to be focusing on, and the ones they're probably going to exploit here, and that is Winona's Catapult. So I've set up a little bit of something here just to show you how overpowered this can be. So we've got some catapults built here, and they function much the same way as the spotlight did as well. So they need generators, and they need to be placed within the range of that generator. Then you can fuel your generator and watch the magic begin. If the enemies are targeting the player, the catapults will go after them. If they're not targeting the player, however, the catapults would just sit there and innocently not do anything. Now, obviously, this is a little bit of an extremist situation, but it allows you to really see how effective these catapults can be at causing collateral damage. You'll notice multiple spiders are dying here, and that's because, unlike things like the Houndius Shootius, these catapults do not target only one enemy. They don't do damage to only one enemy. They have a splash damage effect, and as you can see, it's actually pretty decent in terms of the amount of damage that they do. Destroyed a spider nest, right? A spider den right there, and got a little bit too close. And as you can see, set up properly, they can be quite devastating against large numbers of small enemies and hound waves and the like. I personally think they're a little bit too good, especially in concentrated numbers like this, and what I think Clay should do is consider forcing them to be spaced a little bit further apart so they can't sort of collectively do quite as much damage as they're doing right here. Yeah, because they're really powerful, and I think these, unlike the Houndius, which has a realistic limitation on how many you can build because of the resources required to construct it, the catapults are just really, really cheap. 1 tape, 3 twigs, and 15 rocks. And because of the way that walls kind of don't function properly and Don't Starve, you can just really exploit them to pretty good effect. I'm using fossils here to create this wall, and small enemies cannot break fossils. So just to give you something of an idea of like what you could do with this, I haven't even begun to scratch the surface on the possibilities here for utilizing these catapults, but as you can see, they're pretty strong. Like, these alone would make Winona a pretty powerful character, a little bit overpowered in my opinion, but I think that can be tweaked as well to make her a little bit more equitable, at least until the other characters get some of their abilities. So that is the new Winona update for 2019 for Don't Starve Together. Thank you very much for watching as always, and hope to see you next time.